Hey everybody, welcome back to the Hard4Games channel. I am your host Tony, and an especially warm welcome to you 3 or 4 or 5, potentially, Panasonic 3DO fans out there. I have a very special treat for you today, courtesy of @Panasonic 3DO on Instagram. Thank you, sir. We have a prototype console, a testing unit, we have a technical sample of the memory expansion unit, and we also have prototype controllers. So, let's get started.
This is Hard4Games. They're Hard4Games. They become hard. They're Hard4Games.
So let's go ahead and begin with the memory expansion unit. A couple months back I did a video showcasing my 3DO setup, which included my 3DO memory expansion unit. So if you've seen that video, you're probably familiar with what this is. If you have not seen that video, I'll put a little card here, but I'll also give you a brief rundown as to what this thing is for. So the 3DO has battery-backed internal memory, similar to the Sega CD or the Sega Saturn. But it also comes with the same pitfall. So once you run out of space, you run out of space. And once the battery dies, it's dead. Your saves are just gone. Although unlike the Saturn, the battery in the 3DO seems to last a very good while, like decades, whereas the battery in the Saturn seems to last like 6 months every time I replace it. I don't know what the hell is going on with that thing. It just wants to die. The Sega CD and the Saturn mitigated this issue by allowing you to utilize cartridge saves, either in the Genesis slot or in the back of the Saturn, where the action replay would go. 3DO utilized this. These days it runs for around $150 to $200 complete on eBay, or just for the unit itself, you're looking at $70 to $90, approximately. They're not super common, but they're also not super desired either. I don't think too many people even really know about them unless you are a hardcore 3DO aficionado collector. I acquired one, and probably will be selling it soon, because I wanted to be able to transfer my Lucien's Quest save files from my 3DO to my newer 3DO, or at least newer to me, that is a Japanese version that has the 240p toggle switch on the back. So it plugs into the back of the console, and it also requires a CD, which is the memory manager software. Pulling back up the technical sample, you can see that it has some visual differences with the stickers. And also there is a sticker on the front, which reads Technical Sample, Basic Electric Industry Co. Ltd. Interactive Media Division. And the biggest difference with this thing is that it actually requires external power to run, which is hugely inconvenient, and the retail version does not require that at all. As such, this thing has some different internals and also an indicator light right here. So here are the tech sample internals, and here are the retail internals. Moving on to the controller. So these actually work with the retail units, even though they are a little bit earlier. They only vary just ever so slightly in the internals, nothing super significant. And in fact, when comparing it to a retail controller, they look exactly the same. Only difference being, on the back, this has a version 2.0 label on it. And on the front of our prototype unit, there's actually a warning that says the user must use version 2.0 or above, i.e. the retail controller, on the testing unit. Reason being is that prior to version 2.0, the pinout on the controller was totally different and obviously incompatible. So these are pretty neat, but I know you guys want to see the prototype console, so let's continue. Now let's go ahead and explore the exterior. Now we already talked about the warning sticker warning you to utilize the right controller, so we're just going to go ahead and skip right over that. Now, I'm not sure how well this will show up on camera, but I did want to point out the tops of these different units here. The retail unit is sort of a speckled black and gray, with the speckles actually having texture. Now, this was actually introduced in 1994. Now, this prototype unit over here has a similar color scheme, but no texture. It's flat, matte. Now, the flat matte paint was also available on retail units, but prior to 1994. So as you might be able to guess, that would be 1993. So nothing crazy, but I did want to point it out because, you know, seeing this for the first time, you know, be like, oh, well, like, they look different in terms of their color scheme. So it's nothing crazy different. This is normal, but it's definitely indicative of an earlier model. But unlike the retail version, this one actually has mismatched plastic, and the best example of that is the disc tray cover. It's a different color, it really sticks out, the plastic feels different, and you can tell it's just much darker than the retail unit here. Flipping to the backside, you can see that there's actually a toggle switch on here, which of course the normal retail version does not have. And it's actually drilled into some lettering here, so you can obviously tell that this was done after the manufacturing process, because you wouldn't design a switch to cover up letters. So before we go any further, it's important to note that 3DO Company actually changed the specs of these units multiple times during development. In fact, they changed the specs of this particular testing unit post-manufacturing and pre-sending it out to devs. So, for example, originally it was supposed to have 1 megabyte of VRAM and 1 megabyte of DRAM. They decided, though, that the retail version would have 2 megabytes of DRAM, so they had to go back into these testing units and double the DRAM before sending them out to developers, which is just crazy, and lucky they were even able to do it. As you could imagine, by the nature of 3DO Company and how well the console did, it sounds like utter chaos. But that's just another reason why the innards of these testing consoles look just different and in general messier than the retail version. So lifting the lid here, you can see that there are immediate differences. Do ignore this piece, though this is more disassembled than this is, and this would normally have this cover for the disk drive. So ignore that, but you can see different wiring, ribbons, just sort of a messier setup so far. Now the toggle switch we talked about actually leads to a board with the BIOS chips. Now notice here that they are actually mismatched versions. Not sure if this was intentional on the part of the devs, but we have version 0.9 and version 1.0. And I don't know if this was originally supposed to be attached to anything. It feels like there's like some glue on this. I don't know if it was supposed to be screwed down. I'm not quite sure, but right now it's just kind of loose in there. Now the switch I mentioned allows the developers to toggle between retail and developer/testing mode, i.e. if you have a development version of a game, you can play it via this unit via developer mode. Another item that's immediately noticeable is the date on the disk drive, which is manufactured May 1993. Now, the owner said that this was the earliest he's actually seen. In contrast, my disk drive is dated March 1994. Now, it's actually pretty awesome that the manufacturer bothered to date these, because it really helps with us in terms of, well, dating the units themselves and figuring out what the differences are and when they were made. Now, taking out the drive, we can see the motherboard more clearly. Now, here is the DRAM I mentioned. It is double stacked, and here it is in comparison to the retail version. So this unit will play most 3DO games fine, but some games do have issues. For example, the hardware is too primitive, too early to play Need for Speed. If you try to play Need for Speed, the game will simply crash and burn. Get it? Because of the game. So thank you all for watching, and again, a big thank you to @Panasonic3DO on Instagram. I'm gonna go ahead and link his Instagram and also his YouTube channel in the description below. If you have any interest in the 3DO, definitely check it out, because he has just a massive collection and is very, very knowledgeable about 3DO and 3DO Company. So definitely recommend it. And thank you again, sir, for lending this to me, but also like explaining everything in great detail, because This was just something I wasn't super familiar with before this particular episode. So again, thank you very much. And thank you all for subbing, ringing that bell, joining us on Patreon, all that good stuff that you do, and we'll see you next time.